Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome and thank you for being here and watching our program and watching us here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is David Morassutti, whose power must be elevated because of the top story in at least between us two and the team that we cover, the Toronto Argonauts. Let's jump right into it. MLSE is well, there's a bit of a divorce going on, David, and that divorce means that TSN, the organization that broadcasts the game, is now basically talking about the middle of next year when this deal is approved. Could be on one side with Rogers being fully in control of MLSE. Why don't you give us your take and take it from the top? What happened here? What exactly?
Well, it just sounded like an opportunity for. I mean, it's apparently been something that some people have expected to kind of happen, which is, Rogers really wanted getting a footing into the Toronto sports landscape, right? To have everything under one umbrella. So, as we know, Bell sold its 37.5% stake in MLSE for $4.7 billion. So now Rogers will have a 75% interest in MLSE, which, as we know, owns the Argos, Leafs, Raptors, Marlies, TFC. So now Rogers, out of all the professional sports teams in Toronto, minus when the WNBA team comes, technically also the PWHL team that's under league ownership, but out of the major sports, men's sports, they're all going to be under the Rogers banner. And yeah, it's been it's kind of thrown like just a weird day. It all broke in the morning, and it's just been a whirlwind ever since it came down. Right? What does this mean for a lot of things? Right? What does this mean for broadcasting the teams? What does this mean? As we know, like Larry Tannenbaum, because he had sold some of his shares to Omers, and then how that shifted, how much the valuation of MLSE. Like MLSE, from what I think, when Larry Tannenbaum sold his shares, MLSE was valued at over $12 billion.
Absolutely.
Like, unbelievable to really think about. I was trying to look back how much the pension plan had sold.
Did you find it?
Well, the problem is because that deal happened so long ago, right? And I've been trying to find the exact. I think it was 2011, right?
Okay.
So so here it is. So the teacher's pension plan. This is back December 9th, 2011. The teacher's pension plan sold MLSE 79.53% of the ownership stake for $1.32 billion.
We thought that was a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, this is 13 years ago.
Yep.
None of the teams under the umbrella were worth over $1 billion individually. Now,
all of them are. Well, not all of them. The Argos aren't.
Well, yeah. The Leafs, the Raptors, like the Raptors are worth a few billion on their own.
There you are.
Like, if you've watched, I mean, if you look at the most recent the recent NFL deal, right? I think the Washington franchise, when it sold to Josh Harris and Josh Harris, I think it was like $6 billion for one team, one NFL team. So yeah, it's a whirlwind kind of thinking about what's going to happen, and obviously, like one thing hadn't really been talked about was what does this mean for the Argos? Because let's be honest here, part of the reason when the Argos were first purchased, it was in 2015 with Larry Tannenbaum and Bell, them two coming together. It wasn't even MLSC at the time coming together,
Right.
buying the team. So for 2 years they were under that umbrella, and then in 28, pretty much end of 2017, beginning of 2018, MLSE joined the fold, which meant that Rogers was officially getting involved,
Get
right?
involved. Yep.
And there was two things that kind of came about. I don't know if you remember at the time, Frank. There had been chatter whether or not Rogers was going to be selling the Blue Jays or looking to sell the Blue Jays, and also, um, what does this mean for the Argos? Right, a part of MLSC, where you have one of the media companies who technically don't cover on a day-to-day basis. It's not their platform. It's not something that they have the broadcast rights to. So with Rogers now full ahead, Dave Naylor, credit to him, he went. Apparently, CFL Commissioner Randy Ambrosi met with both Rogers and Bell, and they're feel
I think so.
they apparently, according to Naylor, Ambrosi's comfortable with the change in leadership with Rogers having the full ownership. And look, I'm not going to put the CFL down here. I don't want to make it seem like I am either. But when you
Right.
got a company that's worth $12 billion, and you got the Argos as they're a small footprint of that
Yeah.
company, right? It's the Leafs, it's the Raptors, it's even Toronto FC because that has a big valuation too, right?
Yeah. That's gone through the roof
Right.
recently.
And
Absolutely.
so, look, I can understand because Rogers doesn't have real involvement in the CFL. Why would? But I've said that there shouldn't be concern right now. And look, if one day Rogers decides that they don't want to have the Argos under their form, I'd be comfortable in thinking that Larry Tannenbaum, knowing how much, and Frank, you and I have known that Larry Tannenbaum does like his Argos.
He does. He is
Tannenbaum,
his right hand man.
what better way for Larry Tannenbaum? Remember, we've talked about him potentially going after an NFL team himself.
Yep.
Although I think he's got a stake in a Premier League team, if not
I
mistaken.
think that's why he sold what he did. I think that had something. The two things went hand in hand. I think.
He did try to get into the consortium for the Chelsea Football Club. I don't think that happened. I don't think that went through.
Failed.
Obviously, went
You're
somewhere
right. He
else.
failed in that one.
But there was a French football club, Saint Etienne. So he's in the he does have, like, people got to understand Larry Tannenbaum. He's got the WNBA. He's got obviously this football club. There are some other things outside of MLSC that he is involved in. So I do think that when it comes to the Argos, I'm not overly concerned about their future, as maybe some people think with this whole deal.
Well, I am, but not for the reason that Larry Tannenbaum may leave. That's not why I am. I am because what we're looking at here is a move to try, and it's all about money, right? TSN was looking for money, and Rogers was looking for a way to make more money, right? And so now the question is, where do the Argos fit into those two things? We've got TSN. I don't think is walking away from their football coverage. I don't think.
No.
And I can't believe that I just don't think that Rogers could sell the Argos or walk away from the Argos unscathed. So I think the Argos are safe in that regard. It will be interesting how the Argos look, because Edward Rogers has a reputation, right? Him and his sister have a reputation for, you know, getting involved with the way the teams
Mhm.
are run. We know
Yeah.
that. So, what kind of involvement now will, and we're still a year away from worrying about that, right? I mean, obviously, this change is not going to impact the Argos this season.
Nope.
It's not going to change nothing.
The
In
deal doesn't go through until next year, as you've
Right.
mentioned.
So, in fact, it probably won't impact even next season. There may be some, because the same way Keith Belly came in and said, I'm new here, I'm checking things out. The same thing's going to be true when Rogers puts together their team to run the Argos, if there's any changes, right? Because they'll be doing it their way, whatever that is. And their way being, you've got the situation where we've heard from Sportsnet, not from Sports, I'm sorry, from Rogers. Um, we've heard how the in-game experience is becoming a priority. In fact, there's been some talk with the Leaf Arena looking a little more like the Rogers Center,
Well,
and
it's already started. There's huge
exactly
renovations going on right now.
right. So that it actually enhances the point I'm trying to make. I think the Argos are going to be going down that same road. The stadium right now is one that MLSE manages; they don't own it, and they use the money that they do to help pay renovations as part of the rental fee, if you want. And they're an administration of the stadium and stuff, so they don't have the same kind of you know interest or return on BMO as they do the other places like Sky Dome, and of course where the Maple Leaf cash box over there. They don't have the same kind of direct return, right? It's a little looser. I'm just wondering, with the World Cup coming and that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
um, you know, the renovations that are going to happen right now, we won't see yet. I don't think. When it comes to the World Cup, because seats in the World Cup are worth a lot more than seats that you're
Ooh.
not really using, at the Sky Dome or with the Maple Leaf Cash Box, right? The Maple Leaf Cash Box is a little closer to that. You know what I'm saying, right?
Mhm.
Because they eliminated seats to do what they did between the foul poles at Sky at the Rogers Center, right? They can't afford to do that at BMO with the World Cup coming up. So I bet nothing really serious is going to happen there for a little while. And but we know that that's what MLSC we know that Rogers wants to do that. They believe that the in-game experience is worth spending the money.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've realized. You look across. You look across North American sports specifically. The experience has become a big part of any new stadium. Like, with when it comes to Rogers Center, that's found money for this for Rogers, because when they bought the Blue Jays, Rogers Center was almost a throw-in to that, right?
It's true.
So,
It's very true.
right, we've seen now Scotiabank Arena that's getting a massive renovation, of one of the bigger ones in recent years. So that's again adding to the experience, more money into the pocket. BMO Field, that's gonna be the next one, I think. Right, World Cup. There's things that have to get done. Well, if you're already going to be doing, Frank, you're a construction guy. If you're already going to be moving things, pushing down things, breaking down things, you might as well do others while you're at it, while you got the
Or at
manpower
least
there.
do the preparation or the groundwork for that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Leave the option open. Like BMO Field's great. I think there's always room for improvement at that stadium. They now here's the thing. The difference between BMO Field and everywhere else is anything that they want to do at BMO Field has to get approval from the city. Because while the MLSE operates the building, they don't own the building because that's on exhibition ground. So people have to remember that they can't just go in there and add whatever they want. That has to go through a process. So I think That's something that has to be considered. But I've wondered too, what's going to happen with the Argos and TFC when the World Cup, because they gotta vacate pretty much, unless they can get the renovations done without disrupting the season. So it's an interesting time for sure.
Absolutely. I apologize for the dogs barking in the background. Mommy probably left or something, so I apologize if you can hear those dogs howling in the background. Yeah, it all depends on that, and the long term benefit, of this move is left for us to see. There's no guarantee that this is an improvement or less of an improvement or just the same. It's just more of the same. We really don't know, but it's an interesting opportunity for fans to see what Rogers can do with the Argos. We've seen what TSN can do because it's funny, isn't it? Rogers wasn't part of the original ownership group, which was Kilmer Sports, um, Larry Tannenbaum, and TSN, and now then Rogers came in because MLSC came in, and now TSN is left. So we've had this paradigm shift
Yeah.
of the way the organization will be run because to expect Rogers not to have any input on how the team is run would be ludicrous to even think. So it's going to be interesting on how it's run. Um, I can see actually some things that could change that impact me directly. I could see that happening. So, it is what it is. This is what we're looking forward to, and that is change. And change for the better, or change for the worse, or no change at all. It'll only be determined in the future. Your last word, and then we can move on to other topics more directly with the Canadian football.
I mean, we'll kind of see what's the fallout from this, right? What's Bell doing with the now? What's Bell's plan with the new vested money that they got, and what's next for the CFL, right? You've got a lot of ownership changes happening over the last couple of years, more
Oh yeah.
stability within the franchises, but um, you know, where's the CFL shift and focus going to be, right? With all these changes.
We've seen the ownership changes leading to positive impacts on the organization itself and the team and the way it produces on the field. That's what we've seen. It happened in BC when ownership changed. It happened, of course, in Montreal with winning a Grey Cup, even better than what happened in BC. With BC, it was the image of the BC Lions tenfold was improved with the new ownership. With Montreal, it was a Grey Cup. So I don't know if this will fit into that kind of on the field bump, but only time will tell, right?
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about some football. Toronto went into British Columbia to Vancouver to play the BC Lions. And I don't think a lot of people would have been, I guess, thinking that the Argos were going to be in over their head. Two reasons: the way they've been playing overall and the way they've been playing on the road. They went into a stadium where the team there has improved drastically after hitting a bump.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Argos needed that win more than anything, right? They needed stop the bleeding, right? Two pretty brutal losses where a lot was exposed, a lot didn't look good, they weren't looking like themselves, and BC, like they were a team that was starting to look like they were gonna get back on track, and then that was like a 5 steps back after taking 2 steps forward, because that was the most bizarre thing about that game was Toronto played to their identity. BC tried, then BC decided we're gonna make a quarterback change. What? The game was close. Even like you make the quarterback change when things are when you're like almost out, not even out of it, but when you're like desperate to make a change. I didn't feel the need to make that change, and I think it just also goes to show they still want to get Vernon Adams. Like they want to make this Vernon Adams team. As much as Nathan Rourke has done good things since he's come back.
And what they're paying it?
Well, the paying is really more for next year and beyond, but yeah, they're still paying him a chunk. Like like the thing about BC, you just talk about how much they're paying. They're going over the salary cap.
Absolutely.
They're paying the penalties or whatever because this is a Grey Cup or bust team.
Right. It's in BC, the Grey Cup.
Yeah, like this is such an important year for this BC team, and that loss. Oh man, this is a little more questions than answers about where that team is going and who's now they have this who's going to be the quarterback. How do they get the offense to be better? How, there's been so many things going on with BC, right? Bringing back Matthew Betts, Nathan Rourke surprising everybody and returning. Like maybe there was just so much going on, things kind of need to settle a little bit. It's been a lot of just too much happening at once for that team.
David, maybe, I mean, this is just me spitballing here because I can only, this is an assumption on my part. Is it possible the Vernon Adams experiment, in other words, the one bringing him back and trying to make him look like a great quarterback, is it maybe improving his trade value? Maybe. I mean, he's a diminishing asset, not because of his ability, but because of the BC commitment to their young quarterback, right?
You're bang on the right because there are teams that could use a Vernon Adams right now.
A good Vernon Adams, not the one that they've seen recently.
What irks me is Vernon Adams has been through how many different teams that have moved him, that have traded him, not because of what he's done, but because they've made changes themselves.
Yeah, he's been always on a team that
he was, in my opinion, one of the MOPs before he got hurt. And now we're talking about what's going to happen with him the rest of the year. I don't think they trade him. I think it's insurance. Like you're at this rate, you're keeping him for the year. But yeah, what happens next year? I guarantee there's going to be a trade at some point. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think it will. I think it will happen at the end of the year. I can see a team. Look, Hamilton, Saskatchewan, Calgary. There are enough needy quarterback teams in this league that will.
Well, they won't be able to move him if his reputation is where it is right now. They need to rebuild him.
Yes.
As a good quarterback, because to your point, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but what I will say is this: a lot of teams have guys that they think are their future. Whether we're really happy with the way they're playing, Brown in Ottawa. What are you going to say about him? Saskatchewan has Harris. How good is Harris?
How much does Harris have left in the tank?
Yeah. So, like, I agree with you with the Saskatchewan thing. Adams would be very tempting for a Saskatchewan team for sure. I mean, that would probably be the team of every team that I would probably, put up there as a possible place. The rest of the teams pretty much have guys that they believe in enough that they're not going to trade for the Adams that's played the last few games. They might trade for him if he shows that he's the Adams that can be the MOP quarterback that he was at the beginning of this season.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is they need it. If they want to go as far as they believe they should be going, they need Vernon Adams to get going, because it's also a lot to throw this at Nathan Rourke, who's only been back less than a month. Like, he did not have a training camp. He didn't have a preseason with this team. They're throwing him right into the fire. Right?
Absolutely.
And to me, that's gonna BC. We were talking about it's not going to be a problem. BC's going to handle it right. Are they though? It's always tough when you have two guys who you think can start in this league playing on the same team. I'm trying to think of a similar situation. Okay, here's a good one. Back when Ricky Ray and Trevor Harris were on the same team. Ricky Ray gets hurt. Trevor Harris comes in, leads the Argos to the playoffs, but he pretty much says, I can be a starting quarterback for this team. Ricky Ray comes back. Well, Ricky Ray did not lose his spot because he wasn't playing well. He was hurt.
Right.
You have this other guy playing well too. What do you do? it's different because it's not like the Argos, you know, we're like, oh, we have a good quarterback, but we're gonna bring in another one because we don't believe like it wasn't one of those. But again, it just goes to show that when you have two quarterbacks that can prove that they can be really good or can be competitive, right, and compete and make you a winner, that's not easy to manage. I don't care how good your locker room is. I don't care how good the camaraderie to the two quarterbacks are. You can't. It's tough because both guys want to compete. Both guys want to play.
Yeah, and again, it's about sports are asset driven. They can only spend so much at the quarterback position, BC. Um, that's a fact. There's nothing you can do about it. You cannot overspend in one area like at quarterback, because then you can't spend the money on the offensive line or receivers that you need to do to help make the quarterback that much better. So it's a tough situation for them. Well, Toronto comes into this game, and I don't know if dominate is the right word. But they played a very proficient game. They did something in the game I don't think I've seen them do this year. Uh, they seemed to be a team that knew they had to get off to a lead.
Mm-hmm.
They did that, and they didn't give it up. Those two factors alone are ones that I don't think I could attach to any Argo game team this year. That they have had difficulty, starting games, a big difficulty. In this game here, they started against a team they needed to start fast, because if BC takes the lead early, it becomes a nightmare, I think. And the Argos played BC the way they needed to. They were disciplined. That's another thing that I think
Mm-hmm.
is good about their game. And their quarterback did enough to win, and maybe a little more.
Well, it starts with the play up front, right? Offensive and defensive line. The Argos defensive line had one of their best games of the year, and something that they've been waiting for because this team's defensive line is among the tops in the league. They've had a lot of injuries. I get it. A lot of guys have been in and out, but they had really struggled to get to the quarterback, especially early on, establishing that line of scrimmage. You talked about the lead. Well, what that does is you're not playing catch up. You're not forcing Chad Kelly to be a hero. That was the
Absolutely.
problem. Chad Kelly had to be a hero 2 of the 3 games, right? Hamilton. Now, was it all his fault? A good portion of it was. We haven't really talked about much since about Chad Kelly's return. But like you and I watched most of or a good chunk of that Argos Red Blacks game. I saw a quarterback that, yeah, the conditions weren't great. He didn't have good control of the ball. It was his third game back. Really good Ottawa team that just made life difficult for him. But the problem is he made it difficult for himself because he was making plays that I just set. It was setting his team back. He was trying to do too much. You said it reminded you of the East Final. There was a bit of that in there, right? I thought the East Final was worse just because
Well,
of the magnitude of the
yeah,
game and
absolutely.
and the rest of the team just wasn't. I think the difference now, there's that team has been through so much that they don't have the talent of past years to overcome mistakes. Chad Kelly could throw a bad pick, but his defense could bail him out. It's not happening this time around.
No, and you can't expect it to happen forever. I think the biggest thing that the Argos have here on their side is the date. From here on in, they can look back at the previous part of the season and say, let's toss that out. And every team, I say this every year. I've been one who gave Hamilton a chance to make the playoffs a couple of years ago. I said they could, they did. I'm going to say the same at this time of year. At this time of year in the Canadian Football League, more than any other league that I'm aware of, the last half of the season can really determine how you go out in the year. And you can change your fortunes on a dime in the Canadian Football League after Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
And the Argos now have an opportunity, to your point, to figure out what's their best identity. what's the best thing for them to do as an organization and coaching staff? What kind of plays do they want their team to execute? What kind of reliance are they going to have to win? Are they going to be a team that's defense first? Are they a team that the quarterback doesn't make mistakes? Will special teams be the reason why the Argos win the odd game, and that alone can make a difference because of who they have returning kicks? So, this is the time of year where you can develop the confidence as Montreal did last year and as other teams have every Grey Cup win. It's all about momentum. This is when it begins, post Labor Day. So we'll see what the Argos have in mind as far as what they can do. But I got to tell you, David, it's going to be very interesting because they're now doing something that's the opposite of last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're in a position now where they've got to establish that they're a good team. Last year, they established it from beginning to end. Now they have an opportunity to undo the previous part of the season.
Kind of similar to 2022.
Kind of, yeah, it is kind of, yeah, absolutely.
2022, they weren't the best. They were the best team in the East, but they weren't by far and away. Like Montreal was a little close, but like they were the best team this year. I think them being doubted now helps them,
Well, it
right?
can. It can. Being the underdog. We listened to the Montrealouettes talk about the reason they were going to win is because nobody believed in them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Everyone thought they were going to finish last. All those, I heard all that.
It less about what people were saying about the team. It was what they were regurgitating and telling everyone else, and telling the locker room first, right? Something to motivate the team. So the Argos have an opportunity here to motivate themselves by saying, people don't think we're going to make the playoffs now because Hamilton's playing well. Let's see what we can do. A lot of sports teams love the underdog role. The underdog role is awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm very curious to see how. In what way do the Argos manifest this the right way?
Yeah. How do they do it? What do they look
Right.
like?
I mean, I'm hearing there's a good amount, and the last home game was the game of CNE game. Good crowd, almost about 19,000. I'm hearing that it's gonna be looks like another decent crowd for this Hamilton game. I mean, Hamilton's winning, so fans from Hamilton will now come watch the team as well. So it's going to be again. Last year, I think there was just interest lost, cruise control a little too much. Now they got a lot more to play for, and I think that's just only going to make the games more interesting, especially in the East.
Playoff implications.
Other than Montreal having the record that they have, everything's a toss up. The
Well,
West,
Hamilton beat Ottawa, right?
yep.
And Ottawa has lost Pickett. We've talked
Weird.
we've talked this year about Pickett leaving the Argos being a real that really undercut their defense. If that was true, how do you think his absence now for the rest of the year is going to, what kind of issues are created now that Pickett isn't playing for Ottawa? Is this defense a totally different defense now without him?
It's going to be different. He's among the top defenders. He was the Argos nominee for best defender. I think arguably outside of Wayne McManus, he was one of their best defenders. You lose a player like that, especially the position he plays.
Oh,
not easy. It's not easy to replace that. So that's a big loss for a team that doesn't have a lot of you don't hear a lot about the superstar players. They don't get their you don't hear a lot about them about Ottawa. They do have them. We saw some of them against Toronto. But yeah, I think there's for Ottawa, this is a case right now where there is an opportunity for them to make a push for first, right? Montreal has, if they had won that game, Montreal had the tie, they would have been a little closer.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Montreal's wrapped up first. I think they're pretty much almost there when you have 10 wins right now. 10 wins in 13 out of 13 games. Unless Montreal falls off, which, I mean, it could be possible. Anything is possible. But yeah, if I'm Toronto and Ottawa right now, uh, I don't want to be the one to finish third because that's 2 road games you have to play.
Yeah, well, that's
So,
yeah,
so we'll see
yeah,
how that all shapes out.
yeah. The biggest thing that helped Hamilton, something they've had difficulty producing, is rushing. And you had Greg Bell ran for 99 yards. That's close to 100. 100's a real, and it's not often running backs hit that amount. I think this helped them the most, more than anything. Bo Levi Mitchell, had a really good game as well. He threw an interception, but he threw 2 touchdowns as well. And he had, and that Dunbar. I mean, he's showing a lot to me, David. He's gotten better every year, and now he's the guy that stirs the drink in Hamilton.
He especially the last few games, but I mean, remember when Bo Levi Mitchell was benched?
Yes.
Remember when they benched him?
Which time?
Exactly. Not only benching him, but they got a running game.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, who could have thought a running game makes your offense that much less predictable
Yeah,
and harder to defend?
yeah. It's just hard to believe that's something that has an impact on. Never mind.
Right? Like
I'll let-
Greg Bell's looked pretty good, right? Average 6.6 yards a carry, pretty much 100 yards. He had 100 total, over 100 total yards in the game. And yeah, I mean, I wonder though, did too little too late for Hamilton? Because I think if Toronto beats Hamilton on Friday, I think the East, I think they're pretty much done in the East.
well, it it just makes it that more difficult. Yeah, this game is meaningful. It's going to be a lot of fun to be there to see the game, to watch the excitement, and I'm going to be I welcome the excitement. I've missed the past couple of years of the excitement of the Hamilton fans who actually need their team to have a chance for them to enjoy watching the game. They become dour very easily, and right now they've been revived. The chant in Hamilton is "We're not done yet," and they're not, and they have never been done at this time of the year. I mean, you always have a chance if you're within range at this time of the year. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, and Bo Levi Mitchell has had some success with Calgary against Toronto. One of the main reasons why I think Hamilton picked him up, that he had a lot of success against Toronto, and now we'll see. The defense and the special teams in Hamilton has changed a little bit, right? New coaching and in special teams, and I think Scott Milanovic is starting to understand who he has as a quarterback and receivers, and his game plan. Uh, it's starting to look good. He's starting to look like, you and I both know, he's a top-notch head coach. Nobody can take that away from him. There's a learning curve involved when you take over a team. We said at the beginning this year he hit the ground running because he was with the organization last year, so he had a chance to see it up close. But still, he wasn't operating the controls. So now he is. And now he's having some success. We're going to see how long this success goes. It's going to need to be extended. They've got to win not only against Toronto, but they've got to win again and again, and they've got to go at least.
They got to run the gauntlet.
They pretty much have to run the table. Absolutely, pretty much.
And that's not easy to do in the CFL.
No,
they're not. Like, is this? Can Hamilton be a similar version to Montreal last year? But Montreal were at least close to or at 500 last year.
Yeah, they were a team in the playoffs, and their run was to perfect the kind of team they were for the playoffs. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. I'm thrilled to I really am. I'm thrilled to see what's going on here. It's going to be very interesting, and that game. The Argos are going to have to do basically the same thing they did in BC if they want to win. If Hamilton wants to win, they're going to have to do what they did in Hamilton, and that is score early and often.
Unfortunately for Hamilton, Toronto is getting some reinforcement back. They've got Jared Brinkman coming back. They've got Jake Ceresna will be available after he was kind of questionable. Oh, Wynn McManus is coming back.
Yep, the A team.
Now, unfortunately, it looks like Janarian Grant won't play. He's got a chest injury. He didn't play. He didn't practice this week.
I'm surprised he doesn't have a head injury. One of his dreadlocks came off there.
Yeah, so it looks like he's doubtful to play. I'm assuming he's not going to be playing. So, like the Argos get that's two significant additions you're bringing back on the blue on defense that gives maybe, and that defense played really well last week. So you wonder now, are they going to start finding a bit of their confidence again? And that's dangerous because Hamilton, as good as the start they had in that game, they almost gave up the game too against Toronto in the Labor Day game. So it's not like they ran away with it easily.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. It'll be interesting. And then we have the Montreal-Calgary game, another tie.
So strange.
I don't know what to say about it.
Well, I don't remember the last time I saw two ties in the same year.
Yeah, and especially in close proximity.
Right? Like, that was such a weird game. Also, 1919, it's not exactly a CFL score. Teams really, really struggled to really produce much offensively. And I feel like this is a missed opportunity for Calgary. Again, they're one of those teams that the margin for error was nothing. Like the third place team in the West Division is 5-7. They're 4-8. If they had won that game, I don't know what the season series between Saskatchewan and Calgary is, but Calgary would be within a shoe throw of being in the playoffs. And to me, this is probably frustrating for a lot of these fans because there's a spot right there for the team to get third. Saskatchewan's lost 4 in a row. I think they're winless in 7 or 8 games because of the tie that they had. Edmonton is 5-8. They've won 2 in a row, but they've had some tough losses in between there too. Who wants the third spot? And Calgary, to me, because of everything they've been through with Jake Mayer, benching him didn't go well, so they go back to him. He didn't have a terrible game, but it wasn't obviously not good enough. Now, guess who they play next? The Rough Riders, who they are chasing. And yeah, I think the worst thing that could have happened, other than a loss, was a tie. Obviously, like Dave Dickinson must be almost near his wits' end with that team right now.
And we talked about Hamilton in the Eastern Division. They're only one game behind. They're equal to Calgary with 4 wins.
Yeah,
and they're only 1 win behind the third place team in Saskatchewan. We could have an Eastern crossover. It could actually happen.
I didn't even think about that.
Well, there you go. Now you can start thinking about it, David. I mean, the crossover for Hamilton is quite possible now. They're only 1 win behind, and mind you, though, there's a tie in there as well, which is better than a loss, of course, but it's not a win. Yeah, so it's very interesting in the sense that the teams that are fighting for that third place spot, if we would have started this season saying those were the 3 teams that were going to fight for the last spot after the season started, look at how inverted the standings are. You've got Winnipeg at the top of the list with the way that the start that they had, and there they are. That's how bad a season the Western Division teams are having. that 0-1st, start that Winnipeg had hasn't hurt them enough to even stop them from basically being first, just getting past the Labor Day.
Yeah, like it's very interesting because I thought Saskatchewan would have been a shoe-in for a top 2 spot. You start off the season, what, 5-0? They were 5-1. BC was off to a great start. Winnipeg looked like they were going to be taking a step back, and now, as you said, it's just, again, you go when you go on these runs where, yes, the injury to Trevor Harris really set that Saskatchewan team back, but even with him back playing again, it hasn't really worked out the same. Now, AJ Ouellette has been hurt too. And interesting enough, like, how often do you hear an injury of a running back impact the way your play really is, right? Like, you don't hear about that much in the CFL. Quarterback, yes. Running back, not as much. So I am very curious to see how, if Saskatchewan, like, to me, out of the 3, if you're going to ask me today, which of the 3 teams do I feel most confident will get that 3rd spot? It should be Saskatchewan because I think they have the pieces, but they gotta pull themselves out of whatever is going on right now.
Absolutely, because they're not playing the kind of game that they can. And I look at the standings here, and really it's in flux. And I agree with you that Calgary's the team that really needs to straighten themselves out, and the opportunity that they've been given, and to waste it. And I agree, the head coach, the whole organization must be pulling their hair out. And the only team, I'm not going to say are happy to be where they are, but they have the most reason to be happy where they are, which is Edmonton. They've cleaned up their act, and now they're in the hunt for a playoff spot, and they've played like they want a playoff spot. They've done a great job, and I like that team. I like the way they play, and they're doing it with a key injury. You and I, we've talked over the years about Trey Ford and the opportunity that he's been given to be a starter and how he hasn't had that opportunity. And then he turns around and starts playing the way, we thought he could. And we wondered, Bethel Thompson hasn't really played that well. And now they're glad that they have him because he's had a couple of good games to help the team win. Right. So they're getting from the roster, they're getting the kind of results that a team like theirs needs, which is a team that's on the rebuild and the rebound.
And again, that's a team there where I thought with the moves that they made, especially firing Chris Jones, okay, now they can just focus on what they need to do, and that's a team that if they don't make the playoffs, I wonder if there's going to be some regret with how that season started. Right now, there's a new owner. I'm curious to see how he views the way this team plays. Does he go with the, you know what, they really show me things down the stretch, I'm going to put my full support back behind what we have? Or does he go, you know what, it was such a bleep show to start the year. I don't want that to happen again. Let's get this all straightened out. It's the change in ownership with Edmonton really throws an interesting loop into everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if we can go back to the MLSC thing, and just in the last couple of minutes, we have a couple of minutes. The commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
How does the commissioner play this? Like what challenges does this create for the commissioner? Does it affect the league in any way? Does it affect how they do business in any way? How does this impact their TV rights holder has given up ownership of the team, right? Of the Argos. Now you've got TSN fully you'll have TSN fully on the outside as not a nobody can say, well, TSN wants the Argos to win now that they don't own the team. I wonder if that changes anything at all, or is it just a change that is really not really that important, and maybe I'm putting too much on the fact that TSN now
Well,
is.
I think for him, he needs to know if they're gonna be it's gonna be the same attention paid towards the Argos, right? As with TSN not in with Bell and TSN not in the fold. Um, I also wonder how long Randy Ambrosie has at this position too, and does that impact his priorities as well, potentially? But I think it says something when he goes and he meets with both ownership groups to say, all right, is the status quo changing, or are we good? I think it says something to how he feels maybe about the whole ownership structure. I would say ownership structure, just about how MLSE operates with the Argos in the fold. I think
Yeah,
that's the big part there.
yeah. Well, I guess, yeah. I'm just curious about that, in the sense that I talked about before how important it would be to have Rogers more involved in what's going on in the Canadian Football League, right? This move kind of puts Rogers in the position, where it's up to them. Now they've got, they don't have the TV rights, but they have the ownership of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And now we get to find out how Rogers, you're with Sportsnet. You do a great job, promoting the Canadian Football League and letting people know what's going on in the Canadian Football League. I just wonder whether the rest of the organization now, within the organization, there's going to be a push to do something more positive when it comes to the Argos. There were times there in the past when radio shows on the Fan were very negative about the Canadian Football League. They're pro NFL. A lot of the radio shows and a lot of the people who love sports and talk about sports, the talking heads on Sportsnet, considered the Canadian Football League, the poorer cousin when it comes to football. Football is played in the NFL, not in Canada.
What I'll say, I can't speak. I don't know what's going to happen in that regard because obviously the changes won't happen for a while. I like it when it comes to broadcasting the CFL on platforms or writing or whatever. You have to have the people that have the desire to do it. And when there's a desire to do it, when people want it, they'll do it. And I think that's been also an issue where the CFL has really lost, especially in the big markets. There's a generational gap of people's interest in the CFL. There's enough to talk about with the CFL, that's for sure. But you need the people that are invested in wanting to do it, and we'll see if that changes. With I don't know, I couldn't tell you for sure. But that all comes to also with what the priorities are for the broadcast company because of what they own and what they're promoting for themselves, right? So that plays a part too, and it always has and always will.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. So looking at this week's games, Hamilton and Toronto, we've talked about how important that is. And the Saskatchewan and Calgary one, that's one that you intimated about. Both these teams need to establish something. Saskatchewan, some distance between the teams behind them, and cement their third place position, and maybe even try to create some movement towards second in the Western Division.
And you got Montreal and Ottawa. Like if you're Ottawa, if you have any aspirations of being first, you cannot lose that game on Saturday. You lose that game, I think Montreal's. I'm not gonna say they're completely got first in the bag, but that's one of those games where Ottawa has to show: are they a team that can challenge for first? Are they a contender as we've seen them this year? Or is this tougher schedule? They've had a pretty easy schedule up until this point. Last few games it's been a little bit tougher. They passed the Toronto test. They failed the Hamilton test. Can they pass the test as the schedule gets tougher now down the stretch?
And they plug and play and replace Pickett. Winnipeg and Edmonton. This game here, I think, is the sleeper of all the games. You and I both know Hamilton, Toronto, because where we go and what we cover, that's a monumental game. But Winnipeg and Edmonton is going to be very interesting because you've got a team in first and a team fighting for a playoff spot. And after this game, there could be only a 1-win difference. So this is a big game. And Edmonton has proven they've been playing really well. And this is going to be a benchmark game for them.
Especially with Saskatchewan, Calgary playing each other, Edmonton this is a game they need to win, and in a way, they have to hope Calgary wins.
And Winnipeg needs to continue establishing that they're the best team in the West, which they've done in this part of the season.
And BC's right on their tails.
Absolutely,
right? We know the formula for Winnipeg: finish first in that division, so you get the bye. You only need 1 win to get to the Grey Cup. We have not seen this Winnipeg team win the 2 games in a row to try to get to the Grey Cup since 2019.
There you go.
So,
David, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Thank you, Frank.
He's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing Mondays at 4 p.m. This was a special showing. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'm Candid Frank. Until next time.